Well, that's different, and I wasn't exactly expecting that, but we refreshed the podcast, so we figured we would refresh the music as well. Welcome to another edition of Courtside with Cavs on SI Podcast. It is a Thursday night episode. John Rudder, Tommy Wild, we got a lot to dive into after the last time we touched base. The season had just tipped off, and the Cavs had rattled off a couple of wins. Fast forward a week now, the Cavs 5-0. They sit atop the Eastern Conference, one of two teams in the NBA that are unbeaten. It's been a pretty, if you're going to draw up a start, you've pretty much drawn, you really couldn't draw it up a whole lot better than this. And there's a lot to like so far from the Cavaliers with how they're playing, how they're defending, a lot to like up and down the board here. We'll start with last night, the win over LeBron James and the Los Angeles Lakers. Anytime that you can get a win over LeBron, you have to savor it. He was 19-3 against the Cavs coming in. Bronny played, he scored. Your thoughts on that win, because of everything that could have potentially distracted them leading up to tip-off. They really came out and unloaded on the Lakers in that first quarter.
That was an impressive win. I mean, there, like you said, so many distractions, mainly with the fans, and not like distraction in a bad way, but like, so many other things off the court happening, whether it be LeBron's homecoming, whether it be Bronny James playing his first game, in the same building, same city that his father built such an amazing legacy. That game, I think, was interesting because I'm sitting there watching it. I'm thinking, man, they're like, Tristan Thompson's the only one from that championship team left. So, like, right. You wonder what's going through their minds and everything. Like, you see this massive fan reception for someone who has meant so much to the city, but the franchise as well. But, what is going through their minds of like, I wasn't here when all of this went down. I wasn't here. 2016 was 8 years ago already, which seems crazy to me. But, some of these guys they were still in high school when all this stuff happened. So sure. I think just kind of putting all that off to the side and we're going to show LeBron the respect he deserves before the buzzer. I mean, before tip-off and everything. But the moment tip-off happens, it's back to business. And the Cavs showed that with an absolute dismantling of the Lakers, who had also had a pretty good start to the season as well.
I'm really impressed with this offensive start for the Cavs so far. We knew that Kenny Atkinson was going to come in here and make some changes. I expected them to be more explosive offensively. I don't know if I necessarily expected this. I think that they're probably averaging, I haven't calculated it recently, but when I last added it up, it was like they were averaging 128 or 129 points per game over their first 3 or 4 games. They put up another 134 points last night. I got to admit, I'm very impressed and very optimistic about how things look offensively, because you knew that this team was going to be able to defend and rebound. That's in their DNA. That's part of their, their identity over the last couple of years. But this team really hasn't been known as an offensive team, and they're really just showcasing a lot of their offensive ability here in this season's first week or so.
And I think the one thing going off of that is it feels like in the years past, it's been so much of like a slow start where it's like all of a sudden we're 20 points down or 15 points down heading into halftime. We got to dig ourselves out of this hole. But to me, the biggest difference and the biggest thing that's been such refreshing take, if you want to put it that way, or surprising, has been just how fast this team started. It's been first quarter. We're starting. There's no looking back. We're climbing out to that 20-point lead. We're not letting anybody back into games. It's just foot on the pedal, and we're going to the final buzzer, and that's it.
Yeah, we're not dipping your toe into the water, right? They're coming out, their guns blazing. It's nice to see that too, because there have been times over the last couple of years where this team could maybe look a little lackadaisical. They could maybe let their foot off the gas in the third quarter, and we haven't seen that so far. Again, it's only been a week, but you have to like what you see, and you have to like what the way that Kenny Atkinson is tinkering with things. When we talk about what this team looks like throughout an 82-game season, obviously, they made the playoffs last year. Obviously, they advanced to the second round of the playoffs last year, and they made this coaching change with the thought of, let's make the next step. And if you're looking at it from a linear progression, they've progressed every year, right? They've made the play-in tournament. They made the first round. Then they made it to the second round, and we're expecting where things go from here. What is a realistic ceiling for this team? And that's probably a loaded question to ask right now. We're 5-0, and it's like, hey, NBA Finals are bust right now, but it's kind of a fun topic to approach here.
I think that, honestly, and like you said, maybe this is a little bit of an overreaction just because we're 5 games in and the team looks so dominant in the first 5 games, but I don't see why this team can't be an Eastern Conference team. I mean, if you look at the Eastern Conference right now, it's the Boston Celtics, which, they're the class of the NBA. And after that, it's like, well, what's going on in Philly with all the injuries? The Bucks don't look nearly like the same team they have been in the past couple of years. The Magic, we'll see what they look like on Friday. I mean, they're a young and upcoming team. And there's some other the Pacers are another one who could surprise some people come the playoffs. But, I mean, the Cavs are right there with everybody. I don't see why they can't be an Eastern Conference team and maybe even meet up with the Celtics in the Eastern Conference. I mean, again, maybe it's an overreaction. Maybe it's just, first couple of games we're still in this honeymoon phase with Kenny Atkinson in the new offense. But I don't know, man. It just seems like this team they're so well-rounded. There's not one thing that they do that makes you feel uncomfortable about a situation they're in. Like you said, they have two great guards. Darius Garland redemption season is in full effect. Donovan Mitchell's an all-star shooting guard, sorry. Evan Mobley looks like he's taking that jump, and Jared Allen just keeps us doing Jared Allen things. You have a deep bench, which is important throughout an 82-game season. I don't know, man. I think Eastern Conference seems like the ceiling, and hopefully finals. It's just because the Celtics are so good and they've been there. That makes me a little bit concerned they can't quite maybe make that jump this year.
And oh, by the way, you are going to get Max Strus back at some point. Again, the key moving forward here going to be healthy. I was listening to an interview with George Niang today, and he even credited the depth on this team. And I think that he gave a lot of kudos to Kobe Altman and how they have constructed this roster and put things together of putting together a deep team where they're going to run out 10 guys and give teams multiple looks with this rotation that they're going to put together. And so far, you have to like the return on what you're seeing here. And I thought that was some interesting perspective from him, from the players' perspective of this isn't necessarily a top-heavy bunch. And when you look at them, maybe one through, they don't. I don't mean to say this to denigrate or to be a knock on Donovan, but some teams they have when LeBron was here, it was LeBron, and then the drop off to 2 and 3 and 4 was a little bit more dramatic. But that drop off isn't you don't have this high caliber player on the top end, but the drop off isn't nearly as dramatic as you're going to see across maybe other teams across the league.
Yeah, and I just want to throw this in here because I was curious. Currently, the Eastern Conference standings after 5-6 games, depending on where everyone's at. Cavs in first, 5-0. Celtics 4-1. Then you have the Bulls, third seed right now, 3-2, and after that, it's just kind of a mess. So the Cavs are there. They're a top seed in the Eastern Conference, and I think they're going to prove it throughout the year.
When you're talking about these wins that the Cavs have racked up through the first week or so of the season, we were talking about ranking them, and you touched on the standings. I just pulled them up myself. 2 of the Cavs wins, obviously, against the Raptors and the Pistons, and those are 2 teams towards the bottom of the standings. If you're ranking these in terms of 1 through 5, what does it look like? Maybe what might be your most impressive? I guess that you don't necessarily have to rank them 1 to 5, but what's your most impressive win that you've seen so far from the Wine and Gold, and what's one that you're kind of we'll throw that one away and just kind of worry about that later?
Yeah, I think that if we're looking at our top 3, I'll give you my top 3 wins so far, 5-0. So these are the ones I really think are ones that are showcasing what this team truly has. I think for me, number 3 has got to be the Pistons. That I feel like at that point they've the home opener against your former coach. Again, no one admitted anything, that there's a little extra chip, but you got to feel like there's something along the way there. I think the way they responded and came out and just blew out the Pistons in that game really showed something to me. All right, this team is different. This team has an edge to them this season. And that offensive performance was something. Number 2, I'm going to go with the Lakers from last night. Again, we've talked about the Lakers game quite a bit, but I think the 2 performances from your bigs and Evan Mobley and Jared Allen were something incredible last night, especially in limited minutes. And that's something throughout all of these games, because you're not playing your guys, or because you're winning by 20 points, you're not playing your main guys, 40 minutes a night, which, is so big at this early part of the season. So I think last night's win was super, super impressive because of what those big men did. And then for me right now, my top win has got to be the one in New York against the Knicks. I mean, that showed you the resilience of this team so early, being down 13 points and, staging a comeback in a hostile environment and against a team who you guys kind of had your number in the past few seasons as well. So to me, that win early on in the season, I think it's really showing us that this team is different. When they're at full health, I know they still have Max Strus to get back healthy and everything, but when they're in full health, they can go to toe-to-toe with the Knicks. They can go to toe-to-toe with these top teams. So to me, that room was very impressive, just with, being with your back against the walls. You had Darius Garland, so many questions about him coming into the season. He absolutely goes off against, I'm forgetting his exact stat line, but
I know he had 30 points.
Yep. 34 points, 34 points.
I think 18 of them in the fourth quarter too.
Yeah, exactly. So to me, that win was just super impressive, along with it being on the road, which it's never easy to win on the road in the NBA. So to do that on the road was even more impressive to me.
Yep. I think we're in agreement there with numbers 2 and 1. Particularly, there's a lot. I think that there's a lot to like from each of these wins, each of these 5 wins throughout the season.
For sure.
I've got New York as my top win, particularly because they were on the road and they did trail at halftime and they had to stage that comeback. I thought that they showed a lot of grit, and that was a good early season litmus test for them, and they certainly passed that. Number 2, the Lakers. That's an emotional game. You've got LeBron coming home. You know that you always get his best shot, and he was going to have the extra motivation with Bronny being out there with him. You're able to bag that win. But number 3 for me, I'm going to go with the win on Saturday night against Washington, particularly because this team was just so bad last year on back-to-backs, and specifically in the second half of back-to-backs. So that showed me that there's a different type of focus to this team, maybe a little bit more business-like, maybe a little bit more attention to detail. And they've got a lot of back-to-backs so far this season. We're probably going to talk about it here coming up, but they got another situation here coming up Friday and Saturday night against the Magic and the Bucks. So they're going to have a lot of these situations. They're going to need to get familiar with them, and they're going to need to be comfortable in them. And I was wondering how they would react to that early on in the season, after you've already had the success, after you've already had the vibes. It was nothing but good vibes coming out of the gate here. And then it seemed like a perfect opportunity for them to maybe slip up and be caught off their guard. And they handled business down there in DC. So that was something that I like to see. Yeah,
I like it. I like all those reasons.
Looking forward, we were also talking about, as we discussed topics, we talked about the Cavs and the Lakers. We talked about Bronny scoring his first points on Wednesday night. I also heard plenty of people talking about this. We were actually talking about this at work as well. LeBron's played 20 years now, which is unbelievable to see, to even think about. Somebody asked me the question, like, when was the first time that you even heard about LeBron James? I remember where I was. I was in my middle school gymnasium at Daub Middle School. We were having basketball practice with Coach Jim Meisner, rest in peace. And we were talking about like this high school phenom, and he was probably going to be the first pick in the NBA draft, and like all of this hope around him. Do you think that was the last time that we saw LeBron as a player on the court, or do you think he will get the farewell tour moving forward?
Oh, I think he gets the farewell tour. Absolutely. To me, there's no way he's not going to get the farewell tour. And you know what? He deserves it. He absolutely deserves it. But to me, like, I know we talk about LeBron's been playing in the NBA for so long, but then you look at his stats. Look how good he's playing. I mean,
sure.
You look how athletic he looks. Like, why would he? I don't know, man. I just feel like he's going to play until he can't anymore. And part of me doesn't want him to, because I want him to go out like on this high note. I don't want to see him like struggling, or all of a sudden, I mean, some point injuries, at some point Father Time kicks in with everybody. I don't want to see that from him. I want him to go out on this high note, but you watch him play last night. He didn't play a ton of minutes because of what the score ended up being, but he still had 25 points. He still threw down a couple dunks. Like, he still looks like the LeBron that we've been seeing for the last 20 years. So I just can't say that this will be the last time. I can't say next year will be the last time. And I feel like, I don't know, man. It wouldn't surprise me if 2 years from now we're having the same conversation. You know, I think one of my favorite like memes, NBA memes, was back during like the 2015-16 Cavs when LeBronto happened, and there was some meme, and it was like, I can't wait. We only have like three more years of this LeBron James, and then it was like that was 9 years ago, and he's still doing this. So I don't know, man. I just can't say this is the last year when he's doing stuff like this.
It's wild to think about that run too. And you mentioned it at the beginning of the podcast, and you touched on it there. Like, that 4-year run in Cleveland where they made those finals appearances, they won the championship. Like, that's coming up on a decade ago now.
Crazy.
Crazy. And it's tough. It's hard to think about that being so far away, because that was such a wonderful time to be a Cleveland sports fan. LeBron's in his 40s now. How long is he going to play? You touched on the injury too. Like, he really hasn't had the longevity of his career. He hasn't really had any major issues.
Knock on wood.
I remember I remember LeBron V1 in Cleveland. There was like the elbow issue. He had a little bit of the ankle, but there hasn't been anything that's like knocked him out for a season.
Right.
And I wonder, and I worry, I guess, maybe worry is the better word to use there. How much longer he can go without something like that catching up with him, because he's a physical specimen. Like
for sure.
There's nobody physically that I really can think of off the top of my head that rivals him in the NBA. But when you talk about like greatness and careers, like I always think of Kobe, and he had the Achilles injury and didn't seem like he was necessarily the same after that. I'm with you. I don't want anything to like hamper that and to kind of diminish the last year or so of his career. I want him to continue playing at that elite level. And I'm sure that's probably what he wants too, but man, you really hope that something like that doesn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, and to wrap this up, like even he admitted yesterday after the games, like I'm cherishing these moments when I played Cleveland and in Cleveland, because he doesn't know how many more times this is going to happen. So, I mean, it's definitely in the back of his mind, but I feel like we'll still get at least one more, maybe two more. We'll see about three, but I don't think this is the last time we see him. I feel like he would want to make a point about this being the last time. Like you said, he definitely gets the farewell tour. No doubt in my mind.
And I say this a little bit tongue in cheek too, but we know LeBron loves the spotlight, and we know that a farewell tour would be, there would be a lot of national televised games. It would be a sellout in every city around the country and in Canada. I think that would be something that he would relish, and he seems to thrive in those moments too. So it wouldn't surprise me if he put up big numbers during that farewell tour.
MVP 44-year-old
right, exactly,
like
right?
That's what we're gonna see. He's gonna go out on top and right into the sunset with his MVP at age 44, 45, which I don't know. I wouldn't put it past him at this point.
I was going to say, at this point, it's really tough to put anything past him like that, because I don't think anybody necessarily saw him, having the success that he did. I don't think anybody saw him becoming the all-time points leader. I don't think anybody saw him winning this many championships, winning a championship in Cleveland. He's done so many things, and it's really tough to bet against him at this point.
Yeah.
Moving forward, when we talk about the Cavs, as we kind of bring this conversation back to the wine and gold, we've talked about offense, defense, players. What has been your biggest surprise from this team over the first 5 games or so, and what are you looking forward to see here in the next week?
Yeah, I think my biggest surprise so far has been a team thing, and there's been so much talk about the offense. There's been so much talk about what this is going to look like, so much talk about, Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, that duo and everything. The defense that we've seen through the first 5 games has been incredible. I mean, the points, they've been creating so many points off turnovers. Heading into last night, they were third in the NBA, and then I think they scored around 26 or 28 points against the Lakers off turnovers. But the way they've been forcing turnovers, the way we saw Jared Allen's incredible block last night, the way they've been protecting the plate, protecting the paint, right? Like, I don't know. Like, the defense to me has just been such a big standout. And it shouldn't be, because there's so many great defenders on this team, like Evan Mobley, like Jared Allen, and Isaac Okoro off the bench and everything. But to me, it's just been so nice to see that defense be so strong, while the offense has also been strong as well. And that's probably not something that's sustainable throughout the entire season. That's just the way the 82-game season goes. But so far, the defense has been such a big surprise, and I think it's been contributing. We've been seeing it be the difference maker in these games with all the points they've created off turnovers.
I'm going to go with the offense, because they scored, where they're averaging close to 130 points a game, which I love it. I love how we're experimenting with things. I love how we're pushing the pace. And I think that that's a brand of basketball that's going to work well here as we try to implement Evan Mobley, give him a bigger role, and then also capitalize with Darius and Donovan. And not to circle back to LeBron, because I know that this is a Cavs-centric podcast, but it's tough not to. But there was a comment that I thought was quite interesting, and it's something that I thought about too. And there were a couple of things that happened and that I saw on social media and in the arena that just kind of harkened back to maybe some previous things. LeBron would fit great on our team next year. He absolutely would. Yeah. And I kind of wonder, maybe tongue in cheek, how the Cavs were very, he always gets the tribute video, right? He always gets the standing ovation. They always do things first class, just to kind of maybe leave that door open in case he would like to come home for a season. Maybe that farewell tour is in Cleveland. Because I don't know if you've read Jason Lloyd's book, The Blueprint. He outlined how the Cavs from the moment LeBron left, he outlined how they he outlined how they crafted a path to lure LeBron back, and it started with Zydrunas Ilgauskas' jersey retirement and making sure that was on a night where LeBron was in Chicago and he could get there quickly. And like they started mending the fence and doing some of those public campaigns to like. I just kind of got some of those vibes when I saw some of the stuff last night. Like, hey,
the way the fans treated the Bronny last night.
Say that again.
The way the fans treated Bronny last night.
Exactly.
Like, we're still big fans of the James family here in Cleveland. That's what that felt like to me.
Sure, exactly. So that was something that I thought of too. I thought, I'm not sure what his contract situation is, but I feel like that could potentially they wouldn't necessarily rule it out. I don't know if it's something that it's not something I would bet on, but it's something that it was intriguing. Certainly for that.
Absolutely.
All right, looking forward here. We got 2 games coming up this weekend. Friday night against the Orlando Magic. Then you have a back-to-back situation where you have the Milwaukee Bucks. What are you looking forward to the most here? I haven't had a chance to pull up the schedule here to take a look at the long-term schedule and what we're looking at here through the rest of we're into November here come tomorrow. So that was just a little bit of a reality check for you.
Yeah.
But as we move forward here, what are you most anxious to see here as the schedule continues to unfold?
I'm really excited to see how this team plays against the Magic tomorrow on Friday. I know that as of right now, both Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner are considered questionable. Banchero with the injury, and then Wagner with the illness, I think it's out on the injury report. So it'll be interesting to see if they play. I mean, honestly, I hope they play, right? Like, you don't want to see – this is a playoff rematch from last year. It was one of probably the best first-round series. Honestly, it went 7 games, and they were all pretty tight for the most part. So I hope they play because I want to see what both these teams, as full strength as they can going at each other this early in the season. So that's a game I'm really looking forward to. Hopefully everyone plays and everyone's healthy because that's going to be a fun one, nationally televised on ESPN. But on top of that, I just want to see whether or not how sustainable all of this currently is. How sustainable is, scoring 130 points, so it feels like every single game. How sustainable is this defense? I think part of this fast start has been the fact that there hasn't been too much film on what a Kenny Atkinson Cavaliers offense looks like. Yeah. So as that starts to come into play, as opposing teams see the Cavs more and more, how will they make adjustments to them? And then at the same time, how will Atkinson make his adjustments right back to make sure that, his team succeeds? So I think that just seeing and figuring out how well sustainable this is moving forward is definitely going to be something to keep an eye on over the next couple of weeks.
That's a really good point. And I'm glad that you brought that up too, because I've kind of like maybe in the back of my mind, I've been thinking about that too. Like, when's the bubble going to burst? When are they going to, when are they going to come back down to earth? There have been plenty of opportunities for that, right? The second night of the back-to-back, that game on the road against New York with LeBron in town, there was, the potential for the emotional letdown, but they haven't. They've stayed steady. So I'm anxious to see if they can maintain that mental focus. I think we touched on this maybe last week or one of our first podcasts. It was like almost like a Guardians-esque mentality, like right. Treating it through like a playoff game throughout the entire 82 game season. That way you're already amped up and ramped up and ready to go when the playoffs actually do tip off. Any final thoughts here as we move forward?
I think final thoughts for me is just Evan Mobley, keep being aggressive, keep attacking the paint. I mean, we talk about biggest surprises. Not that I feel like we've been waiting for him to do all this, so I can't say it's a massive surprise, but as long as he keeps doing what he's doing, I think this team's going to be in a great position. And, Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, the core 4 looks good. Those are my final thoughts right now. Core 4 looks really good to start the season.
Easy to like what we see so far. Cavaliers 5-0. They will look to make it 6-0. The last time that they started 6-0, they were coming off of that championship season. Not to suggest anything else, but it would be nice to see the wine and gold back in the NBA Finals again this spring if they were able to run that to 6-0. Cavs back to work Friday night, Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse before they head to Milwaukee to take on the Bucks. We'll be coming at you with our game day report tomorrow morning. That will be posted. They will also have Kenny Atkinson's live pregame press conference, and Spencer Davis will be live on site. We'll have all the postgame action for you as well right here on the YouTube page. For John Rudder and Tommy Wild, thank you for tuning in to the Cavaliers, Courtside with the Cavaliers on SI Podcast. We'll see you at the court.